There were others who were flying simply from Edinburgh to Bristol on a domestic flight, and they ended up in France in the transit lounge because nobody had told them to bring their passports, because why would they? They're on a domestic flight. I have frankly never seen anything of this scale.
At least 5 people have been killed. Tens of thousands of homes are still without power after winds during Storm Isha reached up to 100 miles per hour. Yesterday, train services were suspended. Flights were diverted as a result. Hannah Rush's plane was supposed to land at Gatwick, but instead was rerouted to the Dutch city of Eindhoven.
We were coming in from Krakow. It was a pretty smooth flight until we attempted landing. We ended up having 3 attempts, which were all pretty hairy, before he decided to abort landing at Gatwick altogether. And he's redirected us to the Netherlands.
Well, we've also heard that Storm Jocelyn is coming hot on the heels of Isha, with northern areas more likely to be affected. We'll get the weather picture in a moment, but first let's talk transport with Simon Calder, travel editor for The Independent. Hi, Simon.
Oh, Kate, I am so sorry for everybody who even tonight is out of position. Tens of thousands of people woke up where they weren't expecting to be. Some of them, yes, they were in Eindhoven when they were expecting to be in lovely Gatwick. There were others who were flying simply from Edinburgh to Bristol on a domestic flight, and they ended up in France in the transit lounge because nobody had told them to bring their passports, because why would they? They're on a domestic flight. I have frankly never seen anything of this scale. There's a wonderful thing which I will actually send over to your studio team. It's a map by the online flight tracking company Flight Radar, which shows all the diversions that happened in Ireland and the UK yesterday, and it just looks like the most elaborate piece of knitting.
Yeah.
And that's going to, I'm afraid, be repeated tomorrow. We've already found out that unfortunately ScotRail have cancelled all their trains from 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, forgive me. And it's just this endless cycle. So I call the Storm O oblivion, because we're not going to have any travel industry left at this rate.
OK, so some transport services are back up and running this evening. So if you've got to get somewhere, try and get there this evening and tomorrow, because we know most of the disruption that Storm Isha has caused. Plenty of flights still delayed. But as we go into tomorrow, as our listeners think about tomorrow, Simon, what do they need to be aware of?
Well, actually, tomorrow is going to be a bit of a lull between the storms, because you've got Storm Isha, which has effectively sort of blown itself out. It's done all the damage that it was going to do. And now we've got a little bit of respite before tomorrow evening we get Jocelyn barging in, and that is going to be particularly bad over the northwest of England and over Scotland once again. And effectively, ScotRail or Network Rail Scotland are saying, out of an abundance of caution, we're just going to cancel everything again. And they can do that. I can understand it. They want to keep everybody safe. But in terms of having a reliable way to run your life, I'm afraid it just doesn't work. And people cannot rely on that. They're going to get into their cars. They're therefore putting themselves more at risk. And as you've been reporting, very sadly, fatalities today. So in the skies, it was uncomfortable. No risk, though. Obviously, no harm done. On the railways, it's just been let's see what's cancelled now. And I'm just looking literally at the next 6 departures from Edinburgh Waverley, so the main station in the Scottish capital, cancelled, delayed, cancelled, expected to be late, cancelled. I mean, this is on a good evening, and you can't run your life like that, I'm afraid. So
there are questions to be raised about how we set up for storms as they are likely to become more frequent, and whether it's good enough to just cancel services at a moment's notice. Look, Simon, we will leave it there because we're about to go on to weather, but thank you so much for giving us an update as to where we stand at the moment. Simon Calder there of The Independent. Let's speak to Joe Wheeler, weather forecaster for TalkTV. Evening, Joe.
Hello there. Well, these storms, they're certainly coming thick and fast. Simon, I hate to disappoint you, but actually Jocelyn arrives tonight, which is probably why those trains from Edinburgh are already cancelled, because the amber warning, I think we're just about in it now, and it lasts until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then we actually get some abeyance in the weather tomorrow. We get a bit of a lull tomorrow, and then further rain starts making its way in from the southwest. But obviously, to see two big storms within 48 hours is really quite extraordinary. And of course, we were talking about about Isha in the first place. Firstly, because it covered so much of the country and the amber warning was so extensive. Never really seen that before. And of course, the reality of it was we saw those winds almost up to 100 miles per hour, but widely over 60, 70, even 80 miles per hour across the country, plus the heavy rain. And obviously the devastation that brought, the number of planes diverted that Simon was talking about. Actually, we haven't really talked about ferry crossings, but I wouldn't imagine too many of those went ahead either. Nasty driving conditions when you combine the wind and the rain. And we will see a similar situation tonight. The big difference between Isha and Jocelyn is that Isha at least had the decency to go through overnight, whereas Jocelyn goes through during the day. So we're going to see the wettest conditions, the windiest conditions. Really, well, the windiest conditions first thing in the morning, but then the rain comes and those winds stay strong, gusting between 50 and 70 miles per hour. Now, there is one thing that I didn't actually know, speaking to the Met Office this morning, because they issued a red warning between around the hours
overnight,
of 1 and
didn't
5.
they? Yeah.
They did when we were all asleep. We thought that was very cheeky of them. But a red warning, obviously, the highest warning alert you can have. But apparently, if there's a red warning, people can't work in it. So anybody who was trying to restore rail lines last night, anybody who was trying to restore power lines, or even clear the roads or take greenhouses off railway lines, whatever, they're not actually allowed to do that. They just have to go home and stay safe.
Goodness me, I had no idea about that as well. Look, we are reporting winds of up to 99 miles per hour, but I did see a report earlier, Joe, of 107 miles per hour recorded in Scotland, Tay Bridge overnight. Has that not been stood up?
It's not so much that it hasn't been stood up, but we tend to not look so much at the mountainous regions because they always do get very strong winds.
All right.
So we tend to pick an area further, a little bit lower, a little
which
bit
isn't
more
so much used to it. Okay. All right. So key areas where we need to be careful tomorrow then. There's a bit of a lull, as you say. Storm Jocelyn in place tonight, but where should people be concerned? What areas are going to be worst affected?
Well, certainly tonight, overnight, and into tomorrow morning till about 8 o'clock, you want to steer clear of northern, western, northeastern parts of Scotland. That's where the amber warning is. There are about 3 yellow warnings for both wind and rain. Those will extend further south, right the way down into Wales, northwestern parts of England, pretty much touching the Midlands and away down the east coast, parts of Yorkshire, not so much central, southern, southeastern areas. So those are going to be windy. So there we're going to see these wind gusts around 50 to 70 miles per hour. We're going to see some heavy rain as well. And as I say, it's coming through during the day. So if your children are at school, you're going to be doing that school run at 9 or at 3, whatever, and conditions aren't going to be good. We just need to take more care. I think under other circumstances, Jocelyn would not have been named if she hadn't come so fast on the heels of Isha. We've already got a situation where power lines have come down, lots of people without power. We've had travel disruption. People are anxious to get different places, to go about their normal lives. And in fact, the conditions aren't really going to be conducive for them to do so.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, look, Joe, thank you so much for giving us such a detailed update of what to expect this evening and into tomorrow as well as Storm Jocelyn starts to bear down. Joe Wheeler there, weather reporter, forecaster for TalkTV. You can name your storm if you like, why not? What have we got coming up? KLM. You can name them after a famous person. Why not make them news themed if you like? Someone's sent in the suggestion of Twitter. Mark from Sussex, just trying to resurrect Twitter from the hands of Elon Musk. And someone else has commented on ScotRail being nationalised, SNP winning again. We talked about the reason why those train services from Scotland were so quickly cancelled last night, and why perhaps this can't be better set up for, particularly when we're going to get more storms in the future as well.